The girl was a hostess at a bar. Because of her beauty, she took pleasure in playing with men's feelings. In the end, those men grew resentful. They killed her inside a phone booth. From that moment on, a rumor began to spread about that phone booth. It was said that ghosts would appear there and drag anyone who entered into hell. And the story begins with a girl who has 2 pupils in her eyes. Since childhood, Yayoi has been able to see terrifying ghosts, but the innocent and naive Yayoi was never afraid because of it. She never took these supernatural phenomena seriously. She carefully hid this secret deep in her heart and never told her parents, until a sudden tragedy struck and took her parents' lives. At the scene of the car accident that killed them, she saw clearly for the very first time that it was a ghost visible only to her that took her mother's soul away. At her parents' funeral, Yayoi looked at her father's soul and made a solemn vow. No matter what price she had to pay, no matter how difficult the road ahead would be, she would definitely bring her mother's soul back. But the path to finding her mother was full of thorns. After repeated failures, she once fell into confusion and doubt, until a boy appeared and made her firm in her resolve once again, because from him, she felt a supernatural presence like never before. It was a power that resonated with her. The boy's name was Keitarou, and he also possessed a spiritual constitution. Whenever he was photographed, strange supernatural images would appear in the pictures. Because of this, he fell into deep insecurity. He shut himself in at home for years, almost completely cut off from the outside world. Fortunately, his childhood friend Eiko stayed by his side the whole time, patiently encouraging him. Because of her, Keitarou gradually stepped out of the darkness to help Keitarou better reintegrate into society and leave his past behind. Eiko even recommended him for a tutoring job, but when Keitarou followed the address Eiko gave him to the place of his part-time job, he realized that it was actually Eiko's house. He thought he had come to the wrong place and turned to leave, but Eiko suddenly came out of the house and said with a smile that the one who needed tutoring was actually her cousin Yayoi. Soon after, Yayoi walked out of the house. Her eyes were fixed on Keitarou's glove. She said that something strange was attached to it. Hearing this, Keitarou instantly tensed up. He subconsciously clenched his arm. With his spiritual sensitivity, he could clearly feel that this seemingly ordinary little girl was constantly emitting a suffocating and terrifying aura, and he was absolutely certain that the source of this aura came from the rabbit doll in Yayoi's hand. Yayoi immediately grabbed the rabbit doll by the neck and said it was just playing a prank. She would make it stop. Completely different from Keitarou's panic, Yayoi remained calm. There was a composure in her eyes that didn't belong to someone her age. But then Yayoi made a direct request. She asked Keitarou to take her to places where ghosts appeared. She firmly believed that Keitarou had a natural ability to attract ghosts. Only by following him could she find those places, and only in those places could she find what she was looking for. In the end, after being persuaded repeatedly by both Eiko and Yayoi, Keitarou agreed to her request. Not long after, the 3 of them arrived at their destination, but all they saw was a broken-down, dust-covered phone booth standing there alone. It gave off an indescribably eerie feeling. To ease the tension, Eiko began telling the urban legend about the phone booth. It was said that there was once a hostess who used her beauty to toy with many men's feelings. In the end, she enraged them. The men chased her down relentlessly. She ran desperately to the phone booth to call the police for help, but it was already too late. She was brutally killed inside the booth. From that day on, all kinds of eerie rumors began to spread about the phone booth. It became a haunted place. Keitarou was immersed in the story, but when he snapped back to reality, he realized that Yayoi had already gone inside the phone booth by herself. Although nothing seemed to happen to her, Keitarou could clearly see a thick, sinister aura surrounding the booth. Danger was slowly closing in. To prevent anything from going wrong, Keitarou decided to take action himself. He used his phone to call the number inside the booth, but the moment the call connected, they witnessed a horrifying scene. Yayoi immediately threw the rabbit doll into the booth. The next second, the doll exploded. Right after that, they quickly got into the car and drove away. That night, after Keitarou returned home, Eiko took the initiative to apologize to him. Her tone was full of guilt. She pleaded with Keitarou not to blame Yayoi for being willful, because the reason Yayoi had become like this was due to an accident that took her parents' lives. She longed too deeply to see her mother again, which was why she kept searching for places connected to the supernatural. She hoped to find traces of her mother there. After hearing Eiko's words, Keitarou was filled with guilt and regret, although he wasn't sure whether his strange spiritual constitution could really help Yayoi find her mother. At that moment, he still silently made up his mind to do everything he could to help her. So the next day, the three of them made plans to go back to that eerie phone booth again. Unlike yesterday, Yayoi had specially prepared a protective charm for Keitarou, but this charm was wrapped in Eiko's stockings. Even so, Yayoi seriously said that as long as he carried it, it would protect him from ghosts and keep him safe. Keitarou was just about to make a joke, but before he could say anything, an invisible force suddenly dragged him straight into the broken phone booth. Then the ghost lurking inside used a cold telephone cord to tightly wrap around his neck. The suffocating sensation instantly spread through his body. At that critical moment, Yayoi grabbed her weapon and rushed into the booth. She picked up the charm that had fallen to the ground, leapt into the air, and slammed it hard onto the telephone. On the way back, Keitarou was still shaken and unsettled, but he had no idea that the ghost inside the phone booth had already been sealed by Yayoi into a doll. Ever since the last time the two of them worked together to deal with the phone booth ghost, Yayoi had been constantly sticking to Keitarou to hunt ghosts together, but this time, Keitarou directly refused her. It turned out, he was going to his grandmother's temple to perform an exorcism ritual. The moment Yayoi heard about the exorcism, she became excited. No matter what, she insisted on going with him, but when they had just arrived at his grandmother's temple, his grandmother immediately scolded Keitarou harshly. Then she turned her anger toward Yayoi, blaming her for damaging the statue of the deity. Yayoi hurriedly explained that she did it to subdue a dangerous ghost, and that ghost was very likely the one that took her mother's soul. Keitarou tried to smooth things over, and finally convinced his grandmother not to drive Yayoi away. Once everything was ready, his grandmother had someone give Keitarou an anesthetic injection. Then the exorcism officially began. Eiko quietly told Yayoi that Keitarou's left hand had something like white hair growing on it, but that white hair was actually his nerves. Every so often, he had to come to his grandmother to receive anesthesia and have those nerves cut off. After the procedure, his left hand would temporarily lose sensation, and his overall mental state would become very poor. Yayoi went to his grandmother on her own and asked if she could have the white hair that had been cut off from Keitarou. His grandmother could tell that Yayoi had a strong interest in supernatural objects, so she told her a story. It turned out that in this temple, they often enshrined doll spirits that had been involved in accidents. Among them, the most dangerous doll spirit was sealed in the lowest level of the treasure hall. His grandmother repeatedly warned everyone never to go near that place, otherwise, the doll spirit would lure living people in and swap bodies with them. Right after the story ended, Yayoi saw Keitarou being drawn in by the aura of the doll spirit, walking step by step toward the treasure hall. Because Keitarou had just undergone the exorcism, his mind had not yet recovered. The doll spirit took advantage of this and lured him into danger. Seeing this, Yayoi immediately grabbed a knife and followed him. At the same time, in the basement, the doll spirit controlled strands of hair and forced them into Keitarou's mouth, trying to take over his body. Luckily, Yayoi arrived in time and slashed the doll spirit twice without hesitation, directly cutting off its head. Yayoi warned the doll spirits that if they harmed people again, she would cut off all of their heads. With Yayoi's help, Keitarou narrowly escaped this disaster. After this incident, his grandmother's attitude toward Yayoi changed slightly. Although she still spoke harshly, she told Yayoi how to calm the anger of the deity statue. As long as they offered some offerings to the statues, they would naturally settle down. After they returned home, Yayoi invited Keitarou to take a look at her supernatural collection in her room, but the moment she opened the door, Keitarou was overwhelmed by the intense, terrifying aura inside, and collapsed to the ground in fear. Meanwhile, Eiko beside him didn't sense anything unusual at all. She stepped forward to comfort Keitarou and told him not to be afraid. She had lived with Yayoi for so long, and nothing had ever happened. Just then, Yayoi walked out and asked Keitarou for some of his fingernails. To ease the awkward tension between them, Eiko suggested they go visit a haunted location together, but no matter what, Keitarou refused to go. Even when Yayoi tried to provoke him, he didn't budge at all. Seeing how firm his attitude was, Eiko stopped insisting and drove off with Yayoi. But no one knew that Yayoi's true purpose for this trip was actually to help lift the curse on Keitarou. Along the way, Yayoi noticed that both sides of the road were filled with wandering ghosts. She immediately realized that the opponent they were facing this time was far from ordinary, so she seriously warned Eiko that if she didn't come out within an hour, Eiko must not enter the site to look for her. Instead, she had to immediately go get help. The opponent Yayoi was about to face was Kishimojin. According to legend, Kishimojin was originally an evil deity who devoured children. Later, the Buddha hid her child, forcing her to experience the pain of losing one herself. Only then did she awaken, repent, and become a benevolent deity who protects children. But Yayoi discovered that the Kishimojin enshrined in this temple was extremely strange. Her entire body emitted an evil aura. There were also many ghost children surrounding her. At that moment, Kishimojin launched an attack on Yayoi. A statue suddenly appeared behind her and slammed her to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the 1-hour time limit had passed. Sensing something was wrong, Eiko immediately drove off to look for help. Meanwhile, Yayoi was suddenly attacked by Kishimojin and the ghost children. Her ankle was injured, greatly reducing her mobility. She quickly took out 4 paper dolls and tied them with her own hair. She planned to use them as decoys to confuse Kishimojin. At the same time, Eiko quickly found Keitarou and told him that Yayoi was in danger. When Keitarou learned that Yayoi had put herself at risk to help lift his curse, he immediately set out to rescue her. Meanwhile, Yayoi used the illusion created by the 4 paper dolls to temporarily hold back Kishimojin and the ghost children. But she knew this couldn't last long. Just as the ghost children were about to discover her hiding place, Keitarou arrived in time. He already had a plan in mind. He decided to use his unique constitution as bait to attract all the nearby ghosts. Then he would circle back and rescue Yayoi. Before leaving, Yayoi raised a hammer and smashed off one of Kishimojin's statue fingers in a single blow. Then she followed Keitarou and escaped with him. After going through this ordeal, Keitarou and Yayoi reconciled, and once again became partners fighting side by side. Yayoi then brought Keitarou back to her room and revealed her secret to him. It turned out that all the ghosts in her room had been captured by Yayoi herself. She sealed them inside dolls, and through parts of her own body, she formed a connection with them. As long as Yayoi was harmed outside, the ghosts in the room would bear all the damage for her. And today, 3 of those ghosts had already perished while taking damage in her place. Then Yayoi threw the broken finger of Kishimojin's statue toward them and told the ghosts that it was this finger that had killed their companions. Under the combined assault of all the ghosts, Kishimojin could no longer endure it and wrote words to beg Yayoi for mercy. This scene made Keitarou's hair stand on end. He couldn't believe it. Yayoi had actually forced a deity to kneel and beg for mercy. It was completely unbelievable. Yayoi told Keitarou that today's battle could only be considered a draw. If they wanted to completely subdue Kishimojin, they would have to bring back the main statue from the temple. The reason she was doing all this was to cultivate even stronger ghosts. That way, she could remove the curse on Keitarou. As for why she had asked Keitarou for his fingernails earlier, it was because she wanted him, like herself, to form a connection with the ghosts inside the dolls, so they could also take damage in his place. After realizing how carefully planned everything was, Keitarou finally made up his mind to act together with her.